Hey! The one video everybody been asking me to do for like over a year. And I resisted because I consider the topic extremely banal and incredibly boring. But don't say I don't listen to people. It was discussing CERN. What's going on at CERN? Oh, Large Hadron Collider. The LHC. Now, the one thing that everybody keeps referencing has been endlessly and demonstrably debunked. There's a video. I kind of don't want to go into the video because it has nothing directly to do with the scientists and eggheads that actually work at CERN. It's actually, a lot of people are allowed to visit there and check it out on the Swiss-French border. And apparently video was made there. So discussing that is not useful. Everybody keeps referencing that, but I think a lot of people want to know what's going on in CERN. I, once again, find it incredibly banal topic. The LHC, or CERN, by the way, it was established by the idea and premise by Fabioli Giannori. One of our articles, i.e. books, is Search for Supersymmetry at High Energy Colliders. Fascinating. These people, by the way, are atomists. The World Economic Forum, the WEF, loves talking about CERN, and they said, well, it only costs every European approximately one cappuccino per year. It's so cheap, even though it's astronomically expensive. Fundamentally, I'd have to ask you the question, if you were trying to explain and look for the mystery of how a car works, if you had no idea what gasoline was, as far as its flammable and combustible properties, getting to explaining how a car works might be slightly troublesome. All of these atomists have one thing in common, and it's not my opinion, it's a demonstrable fact, that all of quantum, and these people are atomists, because that's what quantum means, das Lichtquant, i.e. quantity, because these people are not scientists, even though they love calling themselves scientists. What they are is mathematicians. And the religion of a mathematician is that if you can't count it, it's just ridiculousness. You got to be able to quantize everything. If these people were interested in studying love and hate and anger, they would have to quantize it. Well, it's the love particle, the hate particle. It would be one HPU, hate particle unit. That literally is the religion of mathematics. I'm getting to CERN here in a second. Nikola Tesla famously said that the scientists of his day, and it's certainly gotten endlessly worse, could think very deeply, but not clearly. Insane asylums are actually full of deep thinkers that can't think clearly. Intelligent people, by the way, every heinous atrocity you could think of was done by a highly intelligent deep thinker who had no wisdom. They couldn't think clearly. People love to ask about IQ and intelligence, which is wonderful, but it's ultimately not important. Not that I'm praising ignorance here. I'm praising wisdom above episteme, i.e. gnosis. So getting to CERN. So anyway, its founder, Fabioli, Giannotti's Search for Supersymmetry. Well, the ancient Pythagoreans discovered that thousands of years ago, vis-a-vis incommensurability and phi, because the entire universe, and that is the only ultimate supersymmetry. So they're looking for things that were discovered thousands of years ago. I'm going to quote a passage here from a guy in discussing CERN, and truer words have never been said. I'm quoting now. CERN is valid as a directionless hobby and pastime, one that leisurely whiles away the now pointless, make-busy hours of thousands of scientists, physicists, and other super geeks worldwide, and allows numerous egos to wax wearisomely. CERN perpetuates individual and collective freedom of choice and unbridled co-creations, albeit erroneously, in the presumptions underlying the current approach of inquiry. I'd like to get to the WEF here in a second. Who loves CERN? It's right on the WEF's. WEF, of course, is one of the major heads of Hydra. These people are atomists and humanists. An atomist and a humanist, by very definition. And I'm not a creationist. I'm a hardcore Neoplatonic Platonist, specifically like Advaita Vedanta, what the Pythagoreans taught. this monistic metaphysics, completely eliminates this idea of sentient creator, God, and any of the Abrahamic religions. But in so denying an atomist, and I'm certainly not an atomist at all, please don't ever call me an atheist or an atomist, these people elevate, the human as the ultimate, and specifically above that, this idea of energy, even though they've never defined energy, they've never defined a field, and they are atomists. And by the way, all of quantum, once again, like I said, if you can't explain a car if you have no idea what gasoline is. All of quantum and all of relativity, including all of these people who, nearly 100% of which would never be allowed to work on the LHC if they were not an atomist. And they are, of course, humanists. They are intelligent enough to reject Abrahamic idea, because everything is ultimately a religion. These people have made a religion. I have no interest in religion, by the way, only metaphysics. These people have made a religion out of atoms. This is where they came up with their words, not mine, the God particle. The WEF, by the way, on their own website, talks about the Higgs boson, which is completely laughable, by the way. If you actually look up their definition of the Higgs boson, and the definition for it is actually really simple, what it actually is, versus their God particle idea. They literally do call it, of course, the God particle. And the WEF's website talking about CERN and their high praise for it, because they're atomists. Higgs boson isn't the God particle, it's the God DAMN particle. That's the header on the WEF's website. These people are hardcore atomists. But they're just smart enough to reject creationistic ideals, but they're not smart enough not to be atomists. So they're smart enough to rise above this, but they're not smart enough to get past atomism and materiality. Ultimately, these people have never, ever, not my opinion, defined energy or field. They do have a Shiva statue, which of course is the destroyer. I think the reason why the Shiva statue is, it's not a statue, I think it's a bronze cast. I could be wrong, it's either copper or bronze. Cast of Shiva, the creator and destroyer, is a quote from Oppenheimer. I become a destroyer of worlds. He's quoting the Rig Veda. And I think that's the reason why they put the Shiva statue there. So this idea, this, the ritual that was performed there, which has been completely debunked. But even though that's been debunked, the people that are actually behind this it is a religion of atomism. It's based upon their understanding of light. Once again, you can't explain a car if you have no idea what gasoline is. Everything they try to explain about the universe is ultimately their foundation by their own definition, is their understanding of light, but everything they understand about light is erroneous, illogical, nonsensical. It's just completely fantastical. It's unicorn and leprechaun, poppycock, and nonsense. I mean, it's just absolute insanity. Even when I was a pre-teenager and I was reading these advanced books of quantum and physics vis-a-vis some of these famous people who I'm not going to name, I mean, even as a pre-teen, it's like, these people are insane. Mother Nature can't work that way. It's completely ridiculous. Anyway, there's a 27-kilometer circumference particle accelerator, of course, at supercooled liquid nitrogen. I think the main sensor chamber is liquid helium cooled. I could be wrong that. Anyway, suspended in magnetic field. They actually inject hydrogen atoms, and they suspend the proton of the hydrogen atom, which is all a hydrogen atom is. And they accelerate it faster and faster using the right-hand rule of the field. They use one accelerator, they drop it to another accelerator. Finally, it makes its way to the large, the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, and ultimately at the center of which, once the fields are aligned as it reaches, of course there's no such thing as the speed of light, it's rate of induction, near theoretical limits of what the particle is capable of, because there are particles. I've never at any point in time denied particles. I've denied atomism, but the denial of atomism is not the denial of particles. It's a belief system, it's a type of materialistic religion that these people, bow down to, and they do. They've literally made a religion. They keep thinking that if, they're higher and higher energy coefficients and lower and lower temperatures of the main chamber and the accelerator of the LHC, that they're going to discover the face of creation. All of a sudden, their God, which is an atom, and they talk about discovering their God, and they didn't discover that at all. And by the way, CERN is not creating black holes. There's not enough energy there for that. They're certainly not creating, even though they said they've discovered it. They love patting themselves on the back. They love looking for exotic particles, but they're not actually seeing particles. I mean, it's as ridiculous as thinking, you know, a slap is a slap particle, and a punch is a punch particle, and a fisticuff is a fisticuff particle. They're looking at different energy modalities from the sensor chamber. It's like, oh, look at that one. That one's got quarter spin up, and that's a new particle. It's completely ridiculous. By the way, their definition, this is, I'm reading from what they say, is completely obnoxiously insane. I mean, you really, really, really have to be mentally defective to believe in something this absurdly insane. The Higgs field is a scalar field. Do you know what a scalar field is? Don't take my word for it. Go look up a scalar field. Talk about it here in a second. Scalar field with two neutral and two electrically charged components that form complex doublets of the weak isospin symmetry. The Higgs, this is their words, the Higgs is a Mexican hat-shaped potential, the Higgs boson particle, Mexican hat-shaped particle, yeah. These take non-zero value everywhere, including otherwise empty space. Well, space, by definition, is empty. Empty space is like saying empty, empty. These people have never defined field, they've never defined energy, and they have no idea what that. These are deep thinkers. They have a PhD, they can't be smarter than you fat, bald, tattooed monkey. Of course they're smarter than you. They're wearing white lab coats, and they have a 4-year degree. They've done their postdoctoral work in the Higgs boson supersymmetry part. This is once again what Nikola Tesla was talking about when he was referencing those that could think deeply but not clearly. Weak isospin symmetry, the electroweak interaction, and the Higgs mechanism gives mass to many particles. Well, mass and magnitude are synonymous. They're actually the exact same thing. Instead of reference to magnetism that gives anything mass, that's the only reason anything has mass or magnitude. And then, of course, you experience time. And, of course, magnetism, fundamentally, once you have the magnetic field, you have the three-dimensional force vector, and then, of course, you do have spin. And what they discovered and what they're calling the Higgs boson, or their words, by the way, God particle. These people are atomists. To them, their God is a God particle. They've been looking for a God because they've logically rejected a sentient absolute, you know, religion in general, which is commendable, but you have to be a lot more wise than that. So they're intelligent enough to reject that, but they have no wisdom, so they've made a God out of this God particle, which doesn't exist at all. By the way, definition of a scalar field, they've never defined the word field, I will remind you. Scalar field is a function associating a single number. They've reified numbers, which are symbolic representations for things. So they're calling the thing which the Higgs boson exists in and as a scalar field. But their definition of a scalar field is a function of numbers. To every point, their words, not mine, to every point is a conceptual abstraction invented by humans, to every point in a space, well, space has no properties, quote unquote Nikola Tesla, highly accurate, possibly physical space. Space is never physical. They're physical objects taking up space and having mass and magnitude, which of course is due to magnetism. These people, their lexicon and their inability to describe and define anything is completely irrational. It's completely, absolutely neurotic. The scalar may either be purely, these are their words, wait for it. The scalar field may either be purely mathematical, dimensionless, yada, yada, yada. So their God particle, wait for it, in their own words, is a scalar field in a scalar field and of a scalar field, but a scalar field is a number point representation, and they tell you flat out a scalar may likely be just purely mathematical number. So their God particle is in a field that's defined by, that is a concept and a mathematical number, but there are no numbers in nature, simplex pressure mediation. There's field modalities, and there's energy and energy dissipations, but you cannot reify number, which is a symbolic representation, for something else. I mean, that's completely ridiculous. That's, of course, once again, absolutely insane. These people are looking at, by the way, in the LHC, Large Hadron Collider at CERN, the major sensor array, which is super cooled. They're looking at energy vectors on a hypersensitive collection of various sensors. Oh, look at that one. That one's got 0 spin. By the way, their definition of their God particle, their words, once again. God particle. These people, everything these people believe in, by their own definition, is based upon their understanding of light, but everything they think they understand about light is incorrect. It's not a wave, it's not a particle, it's not a wave-particle duality, it's not an emission, it doesn't have a speed. All of these things about light are demonstrably incorrect, nonsensical, insane, irrational, implausible. It breaks Occam's razor's definition of natura naturans. These are, by definition, atomists who are intelligent, deep thinkers who have never had a clear thought in their life. That's not my opinion. That's a demonstrable fact. Anyway, here we go. They're God particles. 0 spin, Mexican hat-shaped. Their words, not mine. They're looking at a pre-force geometry of the plane of inertia. Before spin exists, i.e. the three-dimensional force vector that defines the centrifugal force vector of magnetism, where there is spin, which ultimately is the Lamore frequency. It's also, too, called a magnetic moment. No different than gyroscopic spin, because gyroscopic spin at the central plane is the extrapolation of the three-dimensional force vector of gyroscopic motion, which is a three-dimensional force vector. This is called the Lamore frequency. So they're looking at a and they will, by their own definition, well, the Higgs, you can only observe it for a microsecond. No one's ever observed it. They're looking at energy vectors on a collection of supersensitive sensors that are cooled down below LN2, liquid nitrogen temperatures. But it's only visible for a few seconds, and then it demonstrably becomes a particle. By particle, they mean something that has mass and magnitude, where magnetism exists. So they're literally looking at a bump at the plane of inertia before magnetism manifests. So they're bumping photons, not photons, excuse me, bumping protons from helium. I mean, not helium, excuse me, I kept saying helium. Nitrogen. Why did I say nitrogen? I meant this, I'll edit that out later. Of hydrogen, excuse me, this is what happens when you think of million. They're bumping, accelerating hydrogen nuclei. Here we go, we got it right. Why did I say nitrogen and I said helium? And they're looking at these energy vectors on a supersensitive, enormous collection of sensors. Actually, they get countless gigabytes of data in a matter of less than a microsecond, and they sit there and analyze, and oh, look at that! We've discovered the God particle. There's no spin, and they'll replicate it again. Look, there's no spin! Yeah, you're looking at a pre-force geometry of the plane of inertia before magnetism is manifest. Not only that, you're looking at it at super chilled temperatures. This is what they're calling superconductivity, which is basically near zero magnetic permeability, i.e. supradielectric. We're looking at this thing. They, by the way, their admission is that you can only observe it for a microsecond where it has no spin. And then, poof, it instantly becomes a particle. That's why they're calling it the God particle. Remember when I've said, like, over 1,000 videos, at least 1,000 videos, that magnetism is a dielectric field. Before magnetism is manifest, before the release of energy or inertia of the dielectric, which the ancient Pythagoreans discovered, which is an interesting equation tattooed right here on the end. And that, by the way, this equation, which I could make 100 videos about at least, is the only supersymmetry in the entire. These people are looking for supersymmetry when the Pythagoreans discovered it thousands of years ago. Who knows before them where they might have got it from? Pure speculation, we don't know. I resisted making this video on CERN because I consider it incredibly banal. These are a bunch of hyper-intelligent children that are playing with a mega expensive toy. And they, rightly so, whether you agree with me or not, I don't really care, rejected, the idea of a sentient absolute. So they've rejected, Abrahamic and other faiths. But they've supplanted it with their own little god. It's a God particle. We're gonna, if we smash hydrogen nuclei faster and colder, we're gonna find our God. That actually is what CERN is. And by the way, it keeps these people, thousands of physicists, so they get grants. Give us a 5-year grant. We're going to look for the unicorn particle. It's buried right next to the Higgs boson particle. A lot of super rich, yet extremely unintelligent people donate millions of dollars and give 5-year grants, 10-year grants. Look for the magic particle. These people have been looking for the God particle for it. They think they found it. It's completely asinine. I know exactly what they found. It's a zero spin. It's their words, shaped like a Mexican hat. Go look that up, by the way. Don't take my word for what? These people think it's a God particle and it's shaped like a Mexican hat and it has zero spin. I know exactly what they're looking at. That's their God particle. Here's a fact. Materialists, atomists, mathematicians, no matter what God they reject, you know, and I know which ones that they've rejected, the Abrahamic ones, and I don't care about that. I care less what people believe in. They will replace it with something else, something to worship. Human beings have done that since that. He's really smart, you know, they know what they're looking for. No, they don't. They've never defined energy. They've never defined field. Some people say, you're wrong, they did define energy. If energy is the ability to do work. That is not the definition of energy. It's not even explicative of the term energy. The ability to do work. You mean the release of force? You've never still once again defined the term energy. Their Higgs, their God particle, is from and of and by the scalar field, which by their own definition is a set of energy vectors and a mathematical number. The scalar field. Go look it up. Don't take my word for it. Scalar field. Non-zero value everywhere, including empty space. Oh, empty, empty? You said empty space, which is like saying empty, empty. Function associating a single number to every point in space. That's what a scalar field is. Scalar field is a function associating number, which is a human. Mother Nature has no numbers. Everything is energy, energy dissipation, a field modality. There are no numbers in nature. Numbers are concepts ascribed to things by humans. And it is the God, by the way, of mathematicians, atomists. They don't believe in it if you can't count it. I can't count it, I don't believe in it. A mathematician's God, think about it for a second. A mathematician's God would be a number and a number point field. That is exactly what their God is. The Higgs is in and of by the scalar field, and this is a number. It's a mathematical number. It's dimensionless. It's a function associating a number with every point in space. Isn't it brilliant that the God of a mathematician is a particle which can be counted, and it is of, from, and by a scalar field, and their definition of a scalar field, which doesn't exist, by the way, is a number point value system. Something that cannot, does not, and never has existed in nature. Your Honor, I rest my case. These people are extremely intelligent, and they love playing with billion-dollar toys, but they have not a drop of wisdom in their soul, which they don't believe in, which, of course, I don't care what anybody believes in. So you want to know what's going on at the LHC? That is what's going on at the LHC. A large amount of highly intelligent, extremely unwise people looking for their God, which is a particle, and the particle came from, it has to be mathematical God. Mathematical God has to be a set of numbers and points. That's how these people think. To hammer, everything is a nail. To a mathematician, everything is a particle, and it must be counted! Scalar field. Go look up scalar field. Don't take my word for it. Here you go. This is what's going on at CERN. Extremely banal, extremely hilarious, and at the same time, extremely unwise. Poppycock. Cuckoo! 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 You're welcome. Nailed it. Nailed it.